Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cougar Dash. I am your host, Ryan Root, with my co-host, as always, Cody Schoeler. And we're going to start off with kind of a fun, interesting topic here based off of Max Borghi's recent press conference, where he says he's ready for next season and he's ready to be the best running back in the nation this next year. He wants to have his breakout season. So, Cody, let me ask you right out of the gate. I mean, what's the ceiling for Max Borghi going into 2021?
Yeah, obviously he's going to say he wants to be the best running back in the nation. I'm not sure if that is the most achievable thing, but it's honestly not too far out of the realm of possibility. I think best running back in the conference is pretty much like, I don't want to say lead, but that's kind of like, I think he should be slotted into that initially. I know that Jarek Broussard from Colorado had a good year last year, but that was a handful of games, and I think Borghi would have done even better because we saw what Deion McIntosh did, being one of the top running backs in the conference, and he's still great. But there's a reason Borghi is starting over him. So I think that best running back in the conference is incredibly attainable for him. I don't think that is really too far out of the question. And then he I think could be on the short list for one of the top running backs in the country. He's got a great offensive line he's running behind. I don't know everything about offensive lines across college football, but you got to think, just with the continuity of 4 out of the 5 guys coming back, that was already a good offensive line. You got to think he'll be running behind one of the better groups that there is out there. And then, obviously we haven't seen him yet in this new offense that wants to run the ball a lot more. I think that his year 2 years ago in 2019, if you convert a lot of those receptions to rushes, then I think his numbers would have looked a hell of a lot better, and he would have got a lot more love going into last season. So I'm expecting him to be a top 10 running back in the nation. I think that's barring injury and setbacks. Who knows what else? Maybe Deion McIntosh takes too many carries. I'm not sure, but I think he'll be a top tier running back this year, absolutely in the conference and maybe in the country.
It's just fun to see Max Borghi back in a press conference, and
Yeah.
he looks so happy to answer some of those questions. And I'm excited to see him next season in likely what will be his last season
Yeah.
as a Coug. He wants to have that breakout year to hopefully make a run in the NFL, and would love to see a CMC 2.0 in the NFL from WSU there.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of a ceiling, I mean, you got to. I'm not entirely sure on the status of Jamar Jefferson going into next year. I don't know if he declared or if
he's in the draft. He declared
as well. So
yeah.
Without Jamar Jefferson in that conversation, and I mean, Oregon always has a great group of running backs as well.
They got
but
CJ Verdell.
CJ Verdell, right? And Max Borghi going into this next year, I'd like to believe that the 1-2 punch with him and Deion McIntosh is going to be pretty good. It's going to be one of the bright spots for WSU going into next year, and I think there is a possibility for him to lead the conference in rushing. Fingers crossed that the run and shoot has a good sequel of a season. But I mean, I got to ask at least a little bit in terms of the receiving numbers. I mean, he's had tremendous receiving seasons under Mike Leach. Last year, he only had the one game against Utah, which I think we all kind of want to forget that game. But in terms of the receiving numbers going into next year, I mean, what should we expect for that?
Yeah, I mean, we've yet to see how he's going to be used. Nick Rolovich talked a lot about trying to use him as a weapon and not just a running back. So I would expect to see him run some routes out of the slot and get involved. But at the end of the day, I think he's proven to be an incredible pass catcher. That's what we know. But the knock that he hasn't done it as a legitimate running back. So I think that's going to be his biggest concern. We'll obviously see him get involved. Deion McIntosh didn't get that involved, and who knows how much offense they got to implement. So he'll definitely get some catches. But the receiving core, I mean, they're solid, especially those slots. Renard Bell and Travell Harris, they can handle their job. So I think Borghi, he's going to get the same amount of touches that he was getting. Mike Leach loved to just throw it short to the running back instead of handing him off the ball. So he's going to get around the same amount of touches. There'll just be more carries mixed in, but with a guy that talented, you have to throw him the ball. So they're definitely going to do that. But yeah, so people may look and think that it's his fault or something. If you're just looking at the numbers, you're going to see a decrease in receptions because he was tied for second in the conference in receptions in 2019. But it's not going to be because he suddenly learned how not to catch. It's because he's going to be used more as a traditional running back.
It's definitely going to be interesting to see how his receptions are going to take at least a little bit of a dip in the run and shoot, and hopefully that dip in receptions will transition, nicely into rushing yards. If anything that Max Borghi needs going into a potential NFL career is he needs to build up kind of that rushing resume. We all know that he can receive the ball very well. We all know that he was a really great weapon for that Mike Leach air raid offense, but running backs, they're called running backs, not receiving backs for a reason, right? So we got to see what a Max Borghi, rushing campaign is going to look like next year. And hopefully it's a healthy one and we don't have, just a one game season from Borghi next year either. I really hope that he does put together sort of a rushing resume this next season so he can at least build up his draft stock a little bit. I mean, I know we kind of anticipated it as Coug fans when we first saw Borghi make his presence known at WSU. Oh, we're looking at maybe like an early day 2 guy, or we're looking at maybe like a late first round pick if everything, like if the stars aligned and everything. But that kind of has dipped down as of late, and I still think that he has draftability. There's nothing against that. Him and Abe Lucas, I think, have the highest draftability across the entire roster. It's all about developing that rushing campaign this season and putting his name out there in that regard. In terms of like a prediction for his rushing yards for this next season, I mean, fingers crossed that we actually get, a double-digit game season and we don't get any cancellations or last minute cancellations when the team is out on the field for the Cal game. And hopefully we get an actual, close to a real season next year in the Pac-12. And I do think there's a great chance that he could lead the conference in rushing. I bet you he could get double-digit rushing touchdowns. It's all going to be about him having a ton of confidence and forgetting his, shortened 2020 season and just starting with the best foot forward and kind of in like a redemption season for WSU going into this next year.
Yeah, and the thing that I think that is a bit of a misconception about Max Borghi, from people, not necessarily people like us that, follow the team, but people that kind of just look at the stats, maybe watch occasionally, is that he hasn't done it before on the ground. In 2020, led the conference in rushing yards per attempt, so it wasn't because of his talent that he didn't lead in rushing yards. It was just lack of opportunity, so he's shown that he can do it. And he had double-digit rushing touchdowns. He's done that before. They love to run the ball to goal line. So these are things that he's done. Obviously, I believe he had 900 something. He didn't, or I believe he didn't 1,000. I assume that the talent is the same, if not more, based on maturing and developing. And so I think this is something where the outside looking in, you would have these questions and say, oh, he's just a receiving back. He can't do this or he can't do that. But that's not the truth. It's just what's been the case. He's played in a Mike Leach offense. I mean, Mike Leach went to Mississippi State and had one of the best running backs in the SEC, and he never got the ball because the guy wasn't good. It's because that's what Mike Leach does, and he does it well. So this is going to be the year that he's not really he's proving that this is what he not only can do but has done. So I think he's got a great chance to lead the league and lead the conference in rushing if him and McIntosh if McIntosh doesn't steal too many carries. And I think the double-digit rushing touchdowns will absolutely be there. I think he's going to have an incredible season this year.
So we can kind of progress into this next topic here, which is a little bit more critical than we would like it, but don't worry, we'll wrap it back around nicely, and we could talk about the lovely event that's going to happen this weekend for WSU. But going into next season, I mean, the largest area of concern, there's a ton of different ways we can go about this. There's obviously a quarterback battle kind of going on right now, a defense still trying to figure out their footing, and a receiving core that's still just, trying to hang on to their veterans as much as they can. I mean, what do you think is the largest area of concern for WSU next season?
I think it has to be the quarterback position, and that's for a handful of reasons. One is because of the concern I have with the receiving core as well. Outside Renard Bell and Travell Harris, I don't really know what that's going to look like. There's going to be some question marks on the outside and some guys that are going to have to step up. So I think that, obviously the receiving core is not a huge question because of those two on the inside, but the fact that there's some questions up in the air there along with the quarterback position is what makes me think that this is the largest area of concern, especially when you're looking at last season. The defense, again, was not great, but they showed a lot of improvement. Obviously the linebackers are solid. The defensive line showed that they could, create a little bit more pressure. They were really good against the run, maybe because they were so bad against the pass, but even still, that's a highlight, and that's what Jake Dickert did. So I think that is a bit more to stay. And the secondary, yes, has its problems, but they showed bright spots. I like Jalen Watson on the side. I think they've got some talent there. So the reason I go with quarterback is just because, I like in spurts what Jayden de Laura did, but he didn't, the same questions that we had last year, we have right now. Nothing really happened in that last season to give me any more confidence in this position going forward. And not only that, but it's the most important position on the field too. We've had this, obviously before every year going into it. But, last year was, even when we had those questions to begin with, they were answered by the time season came around. Minshew did an incredible job. Anthony Gordon did an incredible job. Jayden de Laura obviously was a true freshman and had the worst circumstances of all time, but still, all the questions I had and maybe even a little bit more are around now. So that's, still the largest area of concern. And even if every other, question is answered and filled, if there's still those questions at the quarterback position, then there's a lot that WSU has to work through.
I think there's kind of two sides to this, or two levels to this question. What's the largest area of concern, and what is the area of concern and what is the chances of that area being resolved or being kind of solved and whatnot. So the largest area of concern of you talking about the quarterbacks, for sure. I think the largest area of concern for WSU for the past 4 seasons has been the quarterback. I mean, trying to replace Falk, we resolved it and had Minshew. Trying to replace Minshew, we resolved it and had Anthony Gordon. And trying to replace Anthony Gordon, we kind of resolved it with Jayden de Laura, right? It's like what you said of, we kind of liked what we saw in those spurts of, the Oregon State game. He played well. And then he had to play against, 2 powerhouse teams in USC and Oregon. And then the Utah game, like I said, we're just gonna tuck that under the rug for right now. Yeah, but yeah, so the largest area of concern, I would agree partially that it is for the quarterback, but in terms of the chances of it getting resolved, I think are relatively high, judging off of the history with WSU. Now, in terms of the other side of the ball with defense, that's an area of concern that seems to not only remain at large, but we kind of have been on the decline in terms of resolving that. I mean, losing veterans after veterans after veterans, and giving up 35 points in the first half to USC. I mean, I don't know as much if that was the defense's mistakes or the offense's mistakes, but that still to me is a sore thumb, because if you can't get other teams off the field, the team that scores the most points wins at the end of the day. And if you can't keep points off the board from the other side, it's going to be an issue. And that's kind of what's going to keep WSU in games going into this next season and into the near future. I think the offense will kind of figure itself out with either Garantano or de Laura in the back or taking snaps. But the defense, I mean, we can't win a shootout every year, right? We kind of ran into that with Anthony Gordon. I mean, we had a shootout with UCLA. That didn't work out. They had a shootout that kind of went their way with Oregon State, but not every game can really be a shootout. I mean, there's a reason that the teams like Alabama and Clemson can blow out these teams. They got a defense that can keep them off the field. I mean, they got players that are going to go into the draft in either day 1 or day 2 on that defensive side of the ball, and they're keeping teams off the field. If WSU can't keep teams off the field when we're in a conference with, USC and Oregon, and I mean, look at Oregon's defense. That's why they're so nationally recognized. They're kind of the front runner for this conference. I mean, defense still to me is the largest area of concern, and I don't see a huge chance of resolving this issue going into next season.
Yeah, I mean there's definitely some truth to that. The defense did not look great, and the become an elite defense is very, very minuscule. But I think, like I said, is they did show some bright spots, and who knows what we can trust from that season.
That pass rush definitely had some improvement.
Yeah,
I will say.
Who knows what we can take from that last season. It could end up being a complete anomaly, and nothing that was consistent then is consistent now. But I just think that I have I don't know, maybe it's fun, maybe I shouldn't have it, but I have a little bit of trust in what Jake Dickert's doing, and I like what he kind of started to put together. And at the end of the day, this is a team that's going to be an offensive identity team. I don't think that this team is going to turn into a team that is known by its defense and wins games because of its defense. So I think the defense has to be solid, has to be decent to that. I don't know if it'll be this year, but I think that they could get to that level, whereas the offense I think really needs to step up. And I'm not sure, looking at what happened last year, if that'll be the case. I think, we talked about Max Borghi. I think Max Borghi coming back will be absolutely huge. And, that could be all that the offense needs to take a lot of pressure, off a quarterback and really get him going. But, the one thing that, is not, that we can't disagree on is the fact that there is a lot of concern for this team. I think much more in years past. Nick Rolovich is basically, still in his first year. He's in his first, full year, and like we'll talk about very soon, he's coaching his first spring game. He didn't have that last year, so I hope that a full season will answer a lot more questions than last year's terrible season did.
Hopefully. And we have a great event to look forward to on Saturday, which is what we'll kind of wrap up with. And that is, of course, the lovely Crimson and Gray game, which honestly kind of came up, kind of behind me out of nowhere. I mean, we didn't have one last year because of COVID, and now that we're getting the Crimson and Gray game, unfortunately, fans won't be allowed to attend the game, but it will air on Pac-12 Network, I believe, during the time. So Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. On Pac-12, anybody can watch the Crimson and Gray game. This is exciting. I mean, just the fact to have an event like this that's so supported by the fan base and the community. I mean, I remember my freshman year here back in 2018, that Crimson and Gray game. This was post Luke Falk, so we were watching. I think Cameron Cooper was out there. I don't know if Minshew was there. At that Crimson and Gray game. He might have been, and I just didn't notice, but this was well before Minshew Mania. But going to that Crimson and Gray game in Spokane, I mean, it's just an experience for WSU fans to kind of get together and have a great event to kind of revolve around. But let me ask you, Cody, I mean, what should we really expect from this Crimson and Gray game? Yeah,
I mean, for one, I'm excited to see a guaranteed WSU team win. So that's good. I don't care that one of them has to lose. I'm just excited that one of them will get to win.
We will get a win this weekend. Yes.
Yeah. And it sucks that no fans can be in attendance. A huge thing about this spring game is the fact that it's back in Pullman. 2019 was the first year, and so that would be a huge thing if fans are able to attend. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But I mean, I think we have to look for the answers to the questions that we just raised, and obviously I don't want to spend too much time saying that we need to watch the quarterbacks, because I think everybody with one working eye and half a brain knows that the quarterbacks are going to be the most important part of that spring game, and we've talked so much about them. But other than that, I think that there's a lot of players that whether we didn't get to see them last year or we just didn't get to see them enough, because of, the circumstances of last year. It's going to be good to see them. I think Max Borghi, just to see him, just to watch Max Borghi play football again, will be fun. And then on the defensive side, I'm really looking at kind of the secondary, obviously, but those safety spots I think are really up for grabs. Obviously with Aiden Hector, who kind of grabbed a spot, I guess. It was so messed up at that position in the transfer portal. I believe Tyrese Ross is also in the transfer portal, who's another guy who had a shot. I think those might be the two positions that are most up for grabs. Well, okay, one, because I think Daniel Isom is still there. He's back, so he should have a grasp on one of those. But the other safety position might be the position that's up for grabs the most. So that's something to look out for. And then obviously the outside wide receiver spot, I expect to see a lot of bodies going through there. And, this could be the time that somebody really solidifies themselves and they can earn that starting spot right now. We've seen different guys, kind of show out in different practices and different scrimmages, but, this is in spring, the lights are the brightest. So, somebody's going to have a great game outside. And I think that is going to be a guy that, if he could be that number 3 receiver in the offense going forward, that'll be huge.
Definitely seeing the veterans out there this weekend is going to be fun. I mean, seeing Renard Bell and Travell Harris and even Jahad Woods play in possibly their last Crimson and Gray game. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they're counting down the days to be able to play this game. And although fans will be in attendance, like we were saying, just to have kind of a televised event that is showcasing what this team is going to look like the next season, I mean, it's exciting. And in terms of what I'm expecting, I'm just expecting a good time all around. I mean, my expectations, or rather, I guess my requirements for the event are not very high, but figuring out kind of that quarterback situation, I think will probably be the most intriguing to fans.
Yeah,
I mean, Garantano is going to have 1,000,001 eyes on him. It's going to feel like, and not so many eyes are going to be on, Cameron Cooper or what's the freshman's name that just came in? Xavier Ward. Not a ton of eyes are going to be on them per se, but Garantano is going to. I mean, he's going to be probably criticized to the nth degree, probably not just WSU fans, but I bet you Tennessee fans are going to work their way into WSU social media.
Tennessee fans are going to get like a 1 week, free trial subscription to the Pac-12 network, just so they can watch it and then tweet about how bad Garantano is, because they're just the saltiest fans in damn near all sports.
Yeah, what it kind of reminds me of is I remember back in Minshew's rookie year for Jacksonville, I saw a post that I believe it was Fox that posted a picture of a coverage map of a certain week in the NFL season, and it said, it gave you like a legend of this color represented a Ravens-Chiefs game, that's a nationally televised game, and there's this little dot in Eastern Washington, and that little dot represented the Jaguars game being televised to us. I picture that same exact scenario happening for Tennessee fans. The Pac-12 network is just going to reach out to wherever University of Tennessee is located.
Knoxville, I think. Maybe.
Is it in Knoxville? Okay. They're going to reach out to Knoxville, and they're going to watch that game as well. And it's all about just Garantano having confidence going forward. And it looks like he has had confidence in these scrimmages, and being able to see him, in action and not just on a piece of paper, right, with stats is going to be huge for him. And in terms of Max Borghi being able to play in this game alongside Deion McIntosh, as well as their freshman running back that they're kind of taking under their wing. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
There's a handful of running backs that I think can stake a claim to that third spot.
Right. We're probably not going to see a ton of Max Borghi, which is okay. I think we'll see a good chunk of him, obviously, because he wants to get reps in too. He's kind of getting his gears going as well. But it'll be great to see him run around with Deion. The defense, of course, is going to need some extra looks as well for criticism, because although it is a WSU guaranteed win, I mean, generating turnovers and things like that. I kind of want to see turnovers in this game. I want to see the defense being able to make plays. I want to see them get sacks, interceptions, fumbles. I want this to be as entertaining as possible, but also promising as possible going into the next season, seeing a defense that can make plays, that can generate kind of an energy on the opposite side of the ball. I don't believe we have the rosters for the Crimson team or the Gray team. Probably won't get those until game day, but I just want it to be a fun experience for everyone to kind of watch and take in. I fortunately have the awesome opportunity to be able to cover the game at the event for the Evergreen here at WSU. And I'm just looking forward to a fun game that we can all kind of watch and revolve around. And like I said, kick that Utah game under the rug. I think that was a terrible way to end our season. And this should be kind of a bit of a redemption event for WSU.
Yeah, and I think another thing that fans should expect is for all these questions that we have that we want answers for, we're not really going to get any answers. We want to know who the starting quarterback is. This isn't going to decide it. I don't care if Guarantano goes 12 for 12 and Cameron Cooper doesn't complete a pass. Deciding it now. There's still a long ways to go. So don't expect to see big decisions being made now. I talked about receivers kind of stepping up. I think that's possible, but nobody's solidifying a spot now. No matter how well they play. But this is more about players getting on fans' radars. There's a lot of receivers that fans don't know about. There's Donovan Ollie. There's C.J. Moore. There's
Joey Hobart will be
Joey
fun
Hobart,
to watch.
Drake Owens. I believe he's a walk-on. He did great in the first scrimmage. So it's more about these guys getting their first chance to show fans what they're capable of, and whether it is them performing next year or it's time, or the fan needs to know their name for a year down the road. That's what this really is about. And I want to say I object to your Cameron Cooper slander, because I think that if you look at the last scrimmage, him and Guarantano were really close, very similar production.
And Cameron Cooper was making some plays with his legs as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Cameron Cooper, I think he's more in this battle than we think. And if he goes out there and he plays really well, it's the thing that Cougar fans have yet to see from him. It's what we've all been waiting for. And I don't really think he's had much time at a spring game. I believe he got a little bit of time in the last one when Anthony Gordon was competing for the job, but Cameron Cooper really wasn't in that top group. But this is his first time that he's going to go out there. He's going to be the starter for one of those teams, and this is his big moment. So I had a little bit of doubts about him last time. We kind of talked about him, but after seeing that second scrimmage stats, I think that he's got a lot more than we think. So, most eyes are definitely going to be on Guarantano. He's the big name. He's the big transfer. But, I think I'd be on Cameron Cooper. I know my eyes will be on Cameron Cooper. And, I also want to see what Xavier Ward can do, because I'm not expecting him, to factor into the starting job this year. But this could be a guy down the road. And if he could show some flashes now, I think that'd be awesome.
I'm expecting to see a pretty competitive mentality, especially from Cameron going into this game. And it like you said, I don't think that we're going to have a ton of answers figured out, especially for the quarterback discussion. Also, we're going to see a lot of conversation with Guarantano, a lot of criticism and whatnot. But we might be surprised. Just sit back, relax, watch a game, and see, what are some players that stick out and are making plays. It should be exciting. I'm excited for it. It's 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on this Saturday on Pac-12 Network, and it'll of course be at the lovely. I was about to call it Martin Stadium. It's Giesa Field at Martin Stadium.
Yep.
Yes. So, but unfortunately, that is
on the Giesa Field.
That is the first game on Giesa Field.
Watch
Yeah.
for that. Watch for whatever the heck the geese.
We'll see how many
is.
times the commentators mess it up. We'll see
Yeah.
if they call it Martin Stadium one or too many times. But
Yeah.
that's all the time we have for today. You can, of course, find all of our written content exclusively on sportspac12.com, and you can follow them on Twitter at sportspac12. You can find links to that written content on Twitter, Facebook, Yeah, you can find links to the written content on our website, dashsports.tv, and make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at dashsportstv. And lastly, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dash Sports, where you can find all of our shows and clips. And you can catch us at the same time next week, 1 o'clock on Thursdays. And as always, we can enjoy the Crimson and Gray game this weekend. Hopefully we have an entertaining event to watch. And hopefully we can keep our fingers crossed that we can have a good time watching that. But as always, go Cougs.